Attention, Lions fans! For the first time in 3 years, the Detroit Lions are on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs, and with every passing week, that weight gets heavier. This team has been living on the edge, hanging by a thread for weeks now, sitting just outside the final spot in a race that has gone from comfortable to pure survival. The margin for error is gone. The pressure is real. This is a tough moment, there's no denying it. But the history of the Lions has never been about taking the easy road. It's about fighting when no one believes. Now, the challenge is clear and brutal. Beat the teams directly in front of them. No shortcuts, no guarantees. Just head-to-head battles, physical football, and a chance to turn desperation into a comeback. If you're Lions to the core, smash that like button and support the channel. And make no mistake, this conversation keeps coming back to the playoffs because that's all that matters at this point in December football. The Lions are coming off a 10-day break. The news cycle has slowed down, but the stakes have not. When you strip everything else away, the end goal is the postseason. Nobody inside that locker room, and no rational fan, is talking about looking past opponents or assuming wins. This is about survival. It's about finding a way into the playoffs, and then, if you get there, believing anything can happen. That's always been the mindset. Get in, then go on a run. The road ahead is clear, even if it's unforgiving. The remaining opponents include the Los Angeles Rams, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Chicago Bears. December football doesn't allow for comfort or excuses. The Lions technically are not mathematically eliminated with a single loss, which is why you hear people say they can afford one. But the truth is harsher. Without a complete collapse from teams like the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers, the Lions are very unlikely to make the playoffs at 10-7. That's why every scenario, every tiebreaker, and every outside result suddenly matters so much. The immediate focus is the Rams, and there's no sugarcoating it. This might be the toughest task left on the schedule. There's good news and bad news here. The good news is that since the trade that tied Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford together in NFL history, these teams have faced each other 3 times, and Jared Goff is 2-1 in those matchups. That includes the most important one of all, the playoff game. The bad news is that the one loss Goff has against his former team came in Los Angeles. He beat Matthew Stafford at Ford Field. He lost to him at SoFi Stadium. That matters, because this upcoming game is on the road, and that reality can't be ignored. The Lions are underdogs in this matchup, and that's not about disrespect. It's about circumstances. The secondary has been a concern. The pressure on the pass rush is immense, and the Rams present matchup problems that are very real. Can the Lions win this game? Absolutely. This league proves every week that anything can happen. The Carolina Panthers beat the Rams. The Lions are capable of doing the same. But capability and probability are 2 different things, and that's where the tension comes from. If the Lions lose to the Rams, the path forward becomes incredibly narrow. Once you start mapping it out, you realize how much help would be needed. A loss to the Rams would mean the Lions likely have to win their final 3 games. That's not optional. They would need victories over the Steelers, the Vikings, and the Bears, while also hoping for favorable outcomes elsewhere. The Bears' results loom especially large, because that Week 18 matchup could decide everything. Depending on how Chicago performs down the stretch, that final game could determine who gets the 7th seed and who stays home. There are countless scenarios, and that's what makes this moment both exhausting and fascinating. If the Bears go 2-2 down the stretch, if the Lions slip up even once after the Rams game, everything changes. Some paths end with Detroit sneaking in. Others end with the door slamming shut. That's the brutal honesty of where this team is right now. Nothing is guaranteed, and nothing comes easy. Every game feels like a playoff game already, because for the Lions, it basically is. This is why the Rams game carries so much emotional weight. A win changes the entire conversation. A loss doesn't immediately end the season, but it puts the Lions in a position where perfection and outside help become mandatory. That's a dangerous place to live in the NFL. Still, this team has fought before when the odds were long, and fans have seen stranger things happen late in the season. Given everything on the table, knowing how thin the margin is and how many variables are in play, how do you feel about the Lions' chances right now, especially heading into this Rams game? Looking ahead, the Lions' path to the playoffs is fraught with complexity. While a loss to the Rams isn't the end, it would certainly make things more difficult, requiring Detroit to win every one of its remaining games, including crucial matchups against teams like the Steelers, the Vikings, and the Bears. But even that might not be enough if the right results don't fall into place across the league. The Bears, for example, have their own playoff hopes, and the Packers are never far from the conversation, especially after a win over the Lions earlier this season. The Lions need more than just themselves to succeed. They need some help from the teams ahead of them, or at the very least, for their rivals to falter. What the Lions do have in their favor, however, is the fact that they've been in worse spots before. Fans will remember the 2022 season when Detroit was sitting at 1-6 and almost everyone had written them off for the year. But head coach Dan Campbell kept pushing the team to keep fighting, and they finished strong, ending up with a winning record and knocking on the door of the playoffs. That team showed resilience, and even though this year's team is a bit different, that same spirit has carried over. The Lions are hungry, but they can't afford to be complacent. The postseason is too close to ignore, but it's still not a given. Looking specifically at the Steelers game, it feels like the kind of matchup that can shift the momentum. Detroit can absolutely win that game, especially with the way Jared Goff and the offense have been performing at home. But there are questions that need to be answered first. How effective will the Lions' defense be in keeping the pressure on Steelers quarterback Kenny Pickett? Will they be able to slow down the Steelers' defensive front, which has been disruptive? And can the Lions keep their composure with so much on the line? Those questions have answers that will need to be determined on the field. Then there's the Vikings, who are still in the hunt for the NFC North title but might find themselves out of contention by the time Week 17 rolls around. For the Lions, a win against the Vikings could be critical, not just for playoff seeding, but to prove that they can rise to the occasion in high-stakes situations. The Vikings, despite their struggles this season, are always a dangerous opponent, especially with star players like Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins. But if the Lions' defense can step up in this game and contain their offense, it could be a pivotal moment in securing the playoff berth. Finally, there's the Bears. This one is the toughest, both for Detroit and for the fans. It's the last game of the season, and there's no question that the stakes couldn't be higher. But it's also the game that carries the most uncertainty. Can the Lions go into Chicago and handle business with the playoffs on the line? This is a team that has dealt with so many challenges over the past few seasons, and yet the narrative this year has been that Detroit is on the rise. That said, the Bears aren't going to just roll over. They have the potential to be spoilers, and given the stakes, it's going to be one of the most intense games of the year. But here's the thing, despite all the moving pieces, despite all the uncertainty, the Lions do have something that many teams don't: momentum. As much as the playoff race can seem like it's slipping through their fingers at times, Detroit still has that fighting spirit that carried them through the rough patches in 2022. The road won't be easy, and no one is saying it will be. It's going to take grit, determination, and maybe even a little bit of luck. The key to all of this is that the Lions need to stay focused. Every game is a must-win, but the playoff race is also a reminder that the season isn't over until it's over. Detroit can't afford to look ahead to the last game or worry about how they'll manage in the postseason just yet. It's all about getting through the grind, taking it 1 week at a time, and keeping control of the things they can. If they do that, they'll give themselves a shot. With all this said, what do you think, Lions fans? How do you feel about Detroit's playoff chances now? And what's your prediction for the Rams game? Could the Lions pull off the win and keep their playoff hopes alive? Or is this the point where the season begins to slip away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to like the video if you're enjoying the content. Don't forget to subscribe for more updates on the Lions' playoff push. If the Lions manage to survive that Rams game, everything feels different immediately. But if they don't, this season turns into a mental grind that tests both the team and the fan base. Because at that point, there's no more scoreboard watching out of curiosity, it becomes necessity. Every Bears game, every Packers result, every late Sunday matchup suddenly carries weight for Detroit. And that's the uncomfortable truth of where the Lions are right now. They are no longer driving the playoff conversation, they are reacting to it. What stands out the most in all of this is how thin the line really is. One bounce, one blown coverage, one missed opportunity earlier in the season is now magnified. This isn't about blaming anyone, it's about understanding the position the Lions put themselves in. When you're hanging around that 7th or 8th seed, you don't have the luxury of controlling your destiny. You're forced to rely on combinations of wins and losses across the conference, and that's never a position you want to be in, especially with division rivals involved. The Bears are the biggest variable in this entire equation. Depending on how they perform down the stretch, Week 18 could either be a straight win-and-you-win scenario or a heartbreaking elimination game. And that's what makes that potential final matchup so intense. If Detroit gets there still alive, the pressure will be enormous. Not just because it's Chicago, not just because it's a division game, but because it could define how this entire season is remembered. A year that once felt like a step forward could either end with validation or with another painful almost. There's also the psychological side of this. The Lions have spent years trying to change their identity, to stop being the team that fades late or collapses under pressure. This stretch is the ultimate test of that. Can they handle meaningful football in December and January? Can they respond after setbacks instead of unraveling? Those questions don't get answered by talk or projections. They get answered on the field, snap by snap. What makes this even harder is that there is no easy opponent left. The Steelers bring physicality. The Vikings bring familiarity and urgency. The Bears bring rivalry and chaos. And before all of that, the Rams stand right in front of them, potentially holding the key to whether this playoff push remains realistic or becomes a long-shot miracle. That's why this moment matters so much. This is the kind of stretch that shapes a franchise's narrative. And here's the part that fans feel deeply, even if it's hard to say out loud. There is still belief. Not blind optimism, not Kool-Aid thinking, but belief rooted in what this team has shown before. We've seen the Lions fight when they were counted out. We've seen them play their best football with their backs against the wall. That's why no one is ready to shut this door yet. As long as there's a path, no matter how narrow, this season isn't over. Now it comes down to execution and resilience. The Lions don't need to be perfect for 4 quarters every week, but they do need to be composed, disciplined, and opportunistic. Mistakes that were survivable earlier in the season will be fatal now. Every possession matters. Every decision matters. That's playoff football, even if the playoffs haven't officially started yet. This is where I want to hear from you. With everything we've laid out, with all the scenarios, pressure, and uncertainty, do you still believe the Lions can push through this stretch and find a way into the playoffs? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk it out together. And if you're riding with this team until the very end, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and keep your eyes on the screen because we're breaking all of this down every step of the way. What makes this stretch even more exhausting is that there's no clean ending in sight. There's no single game where you can say, if they win this, everything is solved. Even if the Lions beat the Rams, there's still work to do. And if they lose, the season doesn't immediately end, but it turns into a tightrope walk where one slip anywhere, by Detroit or by the teams around them, changes everything. That's why this moment feels heavier than just another late season push. It feels like a referendum on how far this team has actually come. When you look at the Lions season as a whole, you can see how they ended up here. There were flashes of dominance, stretches where they looked like a team that belonged comfortably in the playoff field. There were also moments where opportunities slipped away, games that could have changed the entire complexion of December if they had gone the other direction. Now all of that is baked into the reality they're facing. There's no erasing it, only responding to it. The Rams game sits at the center of all of this because it's symbolic as much as it is practical. Jared Goff facing his former team again, Matthew Stafford on the other sideline, playoff implications hanging over every snap. It's the kind of matchup that draws emotion whether you want it to or not. And emotion can either sharpen you or undo you. The Lions can't afford the latter. They need clarity, discipline, and confidence, especially knowing that the margin for error behind them is razor thin. If the Lions do lose that game, the pressure doesn't ease, it multiplies. Suddenly every remaining opponent knows exactly what's at stake for Detroit. The Steelers won't treat it like a normal road game. The Vikings won't treat it like just another divisional matchup. And the Bears, especially, will smell blood if Week 18 turns into a winner-takes-all scenario. That's the danger of being in this position. You don't just have to win, you have to survive other teams actively trying to end your season. At the same time, there's something powerful about meaningful football this late in the year. For all the frustration, all the anxiety, this is what fans asked for. Games that matter. Games where every snap carries consequence. The Lions are still in that fight, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's stressful. That alone says something about the direction of this franchise compared to where it's been for most of the last decade. This stretch will reveal a lot about the core of this team, about leadership in the locker room, about how they respond when the math isn't friendly and the path isn't clear. Some teams shrink when the pressure tightens. Others find another gear. The Lions are being asked, right now, which one they are. Not in theory, not in preseason expectations, but in real time, with everything on the line. No matter how it ends, these next few weeks are going to define the memory of this season, either as a story of resilience and late redemption, or as another painful lesson about how unforgiving the NFL can be when you leave yourself no room for mistakes. And that's why every snap matters from here on out. I want to know where you stand right now. Do you think the Lions have enough left to fight their way through this and keep their playoff hopes alive? Or does it feel like the pressure is finally too much? Drop your opinion in the comments, and if you're locked in for the rest of this ride, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and stay tuned, because this story is far from over and we'll be breaking down every turn right here. And that's really what this comes down to now, belief versus reality, hope versus execution. At this point in the season, every fan knows the math isn't friendly. You don't need a playoff machine to feel it. You can feel it every time another NFC team wins a game you wish they hadn't. You can feel it every time the conversation shifts from control your destiny to we need help. That shift is uncomfortable, but it's where the Lions are living right now. What's important to understand is that none of this means the season has failed. It means the Lions are being tested in a way that strong teams eventually have to face. This is not a rebuild year anymore. This is not about moral victories or playing hard. This is about results under pressure. That's the bar now, and that's why these final weeks matter so much more than the record alone. They tell you who this team really is when everything tightens. The locker room knows what's at stake. The coaches know it. The players know it. You don't go into December with playoff scenarios swirling and not feel that weight. The question is how they carry it. Do they let it speed them up, create mistakes, force throws, miss assignments? Or do they slow the game down, lean on preparation, and trust what they've built? That answer will show up quickly, especially against a team like the Rams that can punish hesitation. And from a fan perspective, this is the hardest part. You're invested. You've watched this team climb out of irrelevance. You've seen real progress. So the idea of watching it slip away, even partially, hurts more than losing ever did when expectations were low. That's the price of growth. When you start expecting playoffs, missing them stings in a different way. Still, there's a reason people aren't checking out. There's a reason every scenario still gets debated. It's because this team has earned that attention. They've shown enough to keep people locked in. Enough fight, enough talent, enough moments to make you believe that, if things break right, this story doesn't end quietly. These next games won't just decide standings. They'll decide tone. They'll decide how this season is remembered and how the next one is approached. Whether the Lions finish strong and force their way into the postseason or fall just short, the way they handle this pressure will matter going forward. So now it's your turn. Where are you at mentally with this team right now? Are you still confident they can grind this out and make the playoffs? Or are you bracing for a tough ending? Drop your thoughts in the comments, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, and keep your eyes on the screen, because we're going to stay on top of every development as this season reaches its breaking point. At this stage, there's no room left for pretending or softening the reality. The Lions are standing at a crossroads where every snap feels heavier than the last. This is the part of the season where you find out if the foundation that's been talked about for years is actually strong enough to hold when the pressure peaks. It's not about potential anymore. It's about response. What's fascinating and frustrating at the same time is that the Lions don't need to become something new to survive this stretch. They don't need to reinvent themselves. They need to be exactly who they've said they are. A tough, resilient team that doesn't flinch when things get uncomfortable. A team that can handle adversity without spiraling. That identity is being tested right now, not in a blowout win, but in close games, hostile environments, and moments where one mistake can undo everything. You can already feel how thin the emotional margin is. One win can reignite belief across the fan base. One loss can drain the air out of the room, even if the math technically keeps them alive. That's the emotional swing of December